Welcome to part 2 in the Working with New Americans series. In part 1, we reviewed best practices in recruiting and outreach, and we will now shift to best practices in applications, interviewing, and onboarding. For each section of part 2, the general approach is to identify potential barriers faced by new Americans, review cultural issues to be aware of, and we will close with action steps to address these topics proactively with cultural awareness. My name is Anthony Sherwinski. I have supported new Americans with their integration journeys for over 10 years. Most of that time has been dedicated to supporting new Americans from over 40 countries and countless community-based organizations and employers with workforce integration. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in global community engagement, and am a certified cultural intelligence facilitator. The Office of New Americans, or ONA, was created through House Bill 21-1150 in June of 2021. ONA is housed in the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, or CDLE, and as you will see from our vision and mission, ONA's charge and authority spans beyond CDLE. ONA's vision is that all new Americans have equitable access to opportunity and well-being. ONA's mission is to facilitate the integration and inclusion of new Americans into Colorado's civic, economic, and social life. These data points are sourced from the Census Bureau's American Community Survey, an analysis by the American Immigration Council. As of 2021, there are an estimated 570,273 foreign-born residents that live in Colorado. 81% of Colorado's foreign-born population are of working age, which outpaces the percentage of US-born Coloradans that are of working age. The spending power from foreign-born-led households in Colorado is an estimated $15.9 billion. Nearly 30% of Colorado's foreign-born residents have an advanced degree, and 21% of foreign-born Coloradans aged 25 and older with at least a bachelor's degree report being underemployed. In part 1, we covered best practices in recruiting new Americans. The next step is applications. First, we need to discuss digital access and literacy. With most applications only accessible via the internet, this poses a barrier for some folks. Some may only have internet access from public sources during specific times and days during the week, like at a public library. Many people have access to phones, but may not have a computer. If an application is not easily navigable via a mobile device, this can lead to errors in data entry, which can affect basic access, quality, and submission. Second, applicant materials. The US approach to resumes and cover letters can be a barrier. Standard US resume expectations often do not align with other countries' use of the curriculum vitae, or CV. US resumes are typically 1 to 2 pages in length, while a CV can be several pages, and the chronological organization may differ as well. This can lead to the omission of important work and educational experience from online applications and be left off US-style resumes. Cover letters are not a globally established norm. Usually, the lower an individual's English language skills, the more challenging a cover letter will be to write. Third, credential review and transfer. For almost every field, this is a challenging process. This requires an individual to identify an official organization that will verify education or field credentials. Remember, it is estimated that 30% of foreign-born Coloradans have an advanced degree. This means many have the knowledge and experience to qualify for technical jobs. Yet the time and money required for credential review are significant barriers that often cause one's experience or education to go unofficially recognized. This is important to know, both for applications and for upskilling. These barriers bring us to applicant tracking systems, or an ATS. ATSs can also create barriers to new Americans during the application process. While ATSs can support employers with quick screening support, they can also have inherent bias with foreign names, the recognition of foreign credentials, foreign companies, foreign addresses, and can unfairly judge the language on a resume. A LinkedIn survey revealed that 88% of employers stated that highly qualified candidates are vetted out of contention due to ATS criteria. Now that we've established some barriers in the application process, let's consider strategies to operate with cultural awareness. First, in regard to applicant tracking systems, consider these two questions. The first, will your system recognize global experience and locations? More specifically, are there required fields that may be a roadblock for someone with international experience? The following are a few areas where this barrier can commonly be found. 1. In work and education experience that include location requirements. And 2. Certifications with a required verification number. Some new Americans may hold key credentials that should be recognized that will not have verification numbers. A second question to consider regarding an ATS is, will your ATS pick up synonyms of key words that at times can determine whether a candidate moves forward in the hiring process? The second strategy to ensure the application process is operating with cultural awareness is to consider the opportunity for human bias. Beware of bias against names, school names, and company and university addresses. The third involves bias against communication norms. Know that professional email etiquette may be new for some new Americans. Additionally, communicating over the phone can increase miscommunication even with new American candidates who have high English proficiency. If someone does not communicate perfectly via email or over the phone, in-person interaction may be the best solution. Barriers during the application process can lead to people not receiving a job they are qualified for, and this likely contributes to the underemployment rates for college-educated immigrants in the US. Immigrants and refugees are both considered new Americans. According to World Education Services, over 2 million college-educated new Americans are underemployed in the US. Not only does this represent people that could fill highly needed and skilled positions, but we also see the broader negative impact on the economy. Underemployment among college-educated new Americans results in approximately $39.4 billion in foregone earnings and $10.2 billion in unrealized taxes annually. Here are a few action steps to address barriers in the application process. First, review your ATS criteria to decrease bias. Consider essential skills rather than preferred credentials, and ensure that global locations are recognized. Second, review your DEI strategic plan and consider integrating training to address cultural bias. Third, job qualifications. Consider years of experience and equivalency standards instead of requiring unnecessary credentials, of course, depending on the occupation. And fourth, offer assistance. If a credential review is needed, be prepared to offer support and guidance, and have a staff member available to support with extra questions that may arise. If taken, these action steps should broaden your applicant pool to be inclusive of new Americans. The next topic we are going to cover is interviewing. Throughout the interview process, there are several potential barriers that could be listed. I've selected a few major barriers to consider. They include professional attire, language barriers, body language, communication etiquette, and location and style of the interview. Let's consider how to approach these barriers with cultural awareness. First, professional attire. Most new Americans will likely be well dressed for their interview. However, depending on one's circumstances, they may either not know the expected attire and may not have the appropriate clothing in their wardrobe. Second, language and accents. Bias can affect decision-making, and if someone speaks little English, this does not define their ability to execute the tasks of a job, their experience, or their intelligence. Third, know that body language varies from culture to culture. A few examples are different approaches to eye contact, shaking or not shaking hands, how people laugh, sit, talk, and offer gestures of agreement are different in cultures all over the world. Fourth, conversation structures can differ across cultures. Therefore, The standard US question and answer model may play out differently, and applicant responses may not be what someone with years of experience in US workplace culture may expect to hear. Fifth, interview style should be considered. In-person interviews tend to offer a new American the opportunity to best represent themselves. Lack of poor quality internet access may decrease the value of a video interview, and phone interviews can be extremely challenging and will almost always heighten any level of language barrier. Following are some recommendations during the interview process. First, when scheduling the interview, consider how you are communicating. Is it via phone, email, and/or text? My recommendation, communicate via all three methods with a focus on email and text regardless of English level. By using the written word, the information will be stored, and this empowers an individual to translate important information if needed. Be descriptive and directly communicate the date, time, location, interview format, and include any special instructions. Second, the interview day. While the interviewee needs to be prepared and will likely be stepping out of their comfort zone, recognize that you, as the employer, may need to step out of your comfort zone as well. I recommend the following. A, be prepared to think outside the box. The goal is to identify if the candidate can perform the essential needs of the job, and the new hiring team must strive to learn if the candidate can deliver. Given that the interview may not flow in the same way as it could with a US-born individual, the hiring team may need to pivot from a question or interaction. B, be welcoming. This is self-explanatory, but be kind and respectful. If you offer a cold and impolite presence or body language, this can suggest that your company culture is the same. C, new Americans may have especially heightened nerves. For some, this may be their first interview in the US. For others, this job opportunity could be a first step in establishing themselves professionally in their new community. D, language barriers. Consider allowing an interpreter to be present. If this is not possible, consider utilizing an interpretation tool like Google Translate, but know that interpretation tools are not perfect. If you are working with a community-based organization, they may be equipped to offer interpretation support. To close out the interview section, consider these actions as steps to creating more inclusive interview models. First, consider different interview styles. A few examples are working interviews, paid internships, behavior-based interviews, task-based interviews, or apprenticeships. These are all examples of proving skill and ability rather than basing a decision on a standard question and answer interview. Second, offer a tour of the workplace. Third, show the job in action. This can be done via video or by having the applicant see a current employee executing the task of a job live and in person. Fourth, introduce the applicant to team members or their supervisor. Fifth, if you anticipate potential challenges with communication, prepare by coordinating an interpreter or some form of interpretation service. Sixth, at minimum, ensure that the interviewing staff member is highly skilled at communicating with English language learners. The interviewer needs to be prepared to pivot to a new question or know when to ask the same question a different way. And the seventh step, ensure that company culture is felt by the applicant. Know that trust, community, and physical and psychological safety are important for many new American employees. For the final topic in part 2 of this series, we will cover the onboarding process. The onboarding process brings potentially complex paperwork, language, timelines, and expectations that can be new for new Americans. Some of the potential barriers that can come with onboarding are location and transportation, knowledge of forms and documents, knowledge of timeline and standard procedures, language and digital barriers with training modules, acceptable workplace attire or uniforms, and coworker and supervisor communication. As mentioned in the previous section, establishing community, psychological safety, and trusting the employer can be important to new Americans. It is important that the onboarding process be supportive and welcoming at each step. Consider these points with cultural awareness. First, location and transportation. Navigating the area where a business is located may be completely new. Ensure they have a secure form of transportation, and if they are taking public transportation, ensure that the transportation stop is close to the worksite. Depending on the size of a business, some companies have set up rideshare systems or their own daily scheduled pickup and drop sites. Second, the forms and documents that need to be completed can be overwhelming and complex. Be prepared to offer support. Better yet, if you have a relationship with a community-based organization, they may be able to support the completion of hiring documents as well. Third, the timeline and standard procedures may not be fully understood as these cultural norms may be new. Fourth, language and digital barriers can exist in training modules, or if a company requires employees to create a company profile to manage their finances and other private information. If this is the case, be prepared to offer extra support and patience. Fifth, acceptable workplace attire or uniforms need to be clearly communicated and confirmed that the new hire has the appropriate attire on hand. If on-site laundry or cleaning services are available, communicate this. If there are costs for uniforms, consider a reimbursement program for qualifying individuals. And sixth, coworker and supervisor communication may be challenging. This can be represented through miscommunication involving power dynamics, different cultural approaches to time management, and can limit the ability of new American team members to build a workplace community. The following are recommendations to address these barriers. First, prior to the first day, support the new hire with the completion of required paperwork. This could include person-to-person support, interpretation, and translation. Also, when you are onboarding new Americans, they may bring documents that are new to HR representatives. Just because they are new does not mean they are invalid. Follow Form I-9, and if questions arise, review the I-9 website. Remember, anyone can email USCIS or can email an organization that has experience supporting new Americans with job placement, like community-based organizations or workforce centers. Second, on the first day, be welcoming. Ensure that folks are being introduced to team members by someone at the organization whom they already know or trust. In other words, ensure a familiar face is one of the first people the new employee will see on the first day in the job, and have that person introduce team members and supervisors. Third, when it comes to training, recognize that interpretation and translation may be needed. Training often involves essential workplace safety information, and from a new American new hire's perspective, this is a matter of equity. If you are very concerned with safety issues, confirm comprehension through interpretation. Consider offering the training multiple times if needed, or to establish supervisor check-ins to again confirm comprehension. And fourth, some commonly needed clarifications include when your new hire will receive their first paycheck and the cadence of future checks. If the delivery or amount of a first check will be offset due to a start date, clearly communicate this. Know that hourly versus salary pay can cause confusion. In some countries, people will be paid a set amount regardless of the hours they worked. Lastly, schedule management may be a challenge. Standards in communicating time off requests for sick leave or vacation may need extra review. These are action steps that can be taken to support new Americans with the onboarding process. First, onboarding paperwork. Offer support and close guidance. Second, build trust and community. This can be supported through a buddy or mentor system. Third, offer culturally aware options with food storage and food options. Be aware that cultural or religious calendars may require accommodations, and consider establishing affinity or employee resource groups to help create community in the workplace. Fourth, appropriate uniform confirmation. Make it clear if people can change at work or if they will be required to arrive in uniform. If there are uniform laundry services, fully explain how and when these services can be used. Fifth, use interpreters or translation if needed. If you use current staff for interpretation or translation regularly, they should be compensated for this. It is a skill. This is a valuable skill and should be recognized as such. Sixth, support your supervisors by establishing a check-in schedule with new American employees. This needs to be seen as a relationship building and community building rather than performance management. And lastly, communicate clearly, confirm comprehension, and deliver on your promises. Let's recap part 2 of working with new Americans. For applications, consider reviewing your ATS. Provide cultural awareness training for current staff, review job descriptions, required qualifications, and equivalency standards, and be available for questions and additional needs for support. For the interview, consider innovative interview styles to identify skills, provide a tour of the workplace, show the job in action, prep the interviewing team, and be clear with follow-up and next steps with new American applicants. For onboarding, consider offering extra support with paperwork, culturally aware options for food, uniforms, and quiet spaces for prayer. Additionally, confirm understanding of uniform expectations, set a timeline for check-ins, and ensure availability of transportation to the workplace. And lastly, consider the following in all circumstances. Provide interpreters and translation when needed, and work to build trust and community. Please use this QR code and submit any questions directly to the Office of New Americans. And please check out part 3 as we discuss best practices in managing and upskilling new Americans. Thanks for your time.